Two soul friends come together to share years of slow travel, what it actually takes to break from convention, and many experiences and insights of value-inspired living. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Well, hello and welcome to Out of the Box Adventures with Nancy and Elizabeth. I'm Nancy and I'm here with my good friend Elizabeth. We are solo female slow nomads in midlife, meaning that I think for me it's been 6 years, Elizabeth also about 5 or 6 years. We sold everything. We sold our belongings, our homes, and decided to be nomads. We were friends before this, however, and we've decided to start this YouTube podcast to share our real life adventures as we go places, stay there, live as normal people. And with that, I'll let Elizabeth tell you a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, this is really awesome. We actually met doing a trip, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and we were friends for several years, like 4 years or something like that, and wound up both moving out of the same town that we were living in around the same time, and living these parallel lives in a way. I lived in Maine for 2 years after Idaho, and then started traveling full time 4 years ago with my daughter, who at the time was in high school, but because of the turn of events globally, she was online. So we figured, why not just take the education, our lives, the experience on the road. So we wound up selling our house, and we put, I had actually, when I left Idaho 2 years before, sold and got rid of most everything. And then we moved to Idaho with a carload, and accumulated another house full of stuff. Very minimally, though, and very carefully. I was very careful with and discerning with anything that I brought in. So we did put some things in storage actually before taking off for the last 4 years, and traveled for a year through the United States. And like Nancy was talking about, slow traveling, meaning we were doing these immersive experiences. There were a few places we just stayed a night or two, but mostly we would go and stay a month or two at a time in an area, in a town, sometimes even within a couple towns of a region, like we did in Arkansas, for example, and stayed 2 months in Texas. But we even stayed in different places within the same city before, just to get a feel for different parts of the
Oh, that's
city.
cool. What cities did you do that in?
San Antonio.
Mm.
And the funny thing is that we lived in San Antonio when my daughter was really young. She had learned to walk there. She turned 1 there. So we
Oh,
went
wow. Good for
back
them.
and stayed there for 2 months, and it was kind of this homecoming in a way. Um,
And how old was she when you started traveling?
let's see, she just turned 21, so she was 17,
17.
16. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And then we were looking for the new place to live. And we really thought we were going to wind up in Tennessee. We spent a month in Chattanooga, loved it. Um, when, yeah, we traveled from Maine all the way down. We stayed in Florida for a month. In St. Augustine, we went all the way across to Texas, and then came back, and we're heading back up north and looked at each other and said, "Well, what was your favorite place? Can you imagine yourself living anywhere that we've been?" And she turned to me and she said, "Ireland." Yeah. Which, we had lived in Ireland for almost a year, a couple years before we left Idaho. She went to, yeah, a Waldorf school there for like 7th grade,
I
which,
remember you
yeah,
talking about that.
that was
Yeah.
awesome. So that was kind of the intro to our adventures of in this way. And I just started laughing when she said Ireland, but we knew it as soon as we said that. So we went back to Maine, took care of some things, and then we flew to Europe. And we've actually been touring through Europe almost exclusively since then. She's been with some friends in Canada, and then we both went back and helped my mom out in New Jersey for. I actually stayed for a year. Noria was there far less and continued traveling, but I'm in Albania right now, so.
So Elizabeth, let me just backtrack for a second. So we met in Idaho. I was living there. You moved there. And then you and Noria basically left Idaho, traveling around the states, kind of looking slowly for where you would like to settle, right? Would you say that still now, 4 years later, you're kind of looking for that? That's been your impetus even in Ireland and Europe?
A little bit, yeah, yeah, definitely. I have to say that it's been both a lifestyle and also looking to see where home could be, because there's just been a lot of challenges that I know not just us deal with, that kind of instigated it. I had a huge unexpected tax bill, actually, that
Mm,
was a big instigator,
mm.
and we chose to make lemonade out of that basket of lemons and said, we're not going to let this take us down or, define who we are in terms of what we can and can't do. Um, and there were many other things going on at that time as well that we were saying that to. So seeking freedom and for our own personal decisions, for our health, for the way that we wanted to live our lives, and for looking for home. And so, yeah,
Yeah, I totally hear that. I think similar reasons.
yeah. Tell us about what you've been up to, Nancy.
Okay, so I'll start with I was living in Moscow, Idaho, where Elizabeth and I met and we're friends. And in 2019, I was living on 20 acres um, in the country, not far from town, with a beautiful Great Pyrenees, my Great Pyrenees, and cats. And I was going to get chickens and do many things there. But I was really not happy, and I didn't realize it until I was at a uh, body worker massage session, and the person working on me said, "You don't even want to be here anymore." And I said, "What?" And unconsciously, what had come out of my mouth, what I didn't even realize was, I don't even know why I'm here now that my father is gone. And my father had passed several years previously. He was
Right.
my last family member. And that, once I really got that I'd said that, it took a few weeks, but everything started clicking that I did not want to live there anymore in that community. And although I loved my house and my land and my animals, it was too much. And once I really shifted and realized I could sell everything and basically be free and travel, which I had loved to do when I was younger. Within 6 months, I had it done. I put my house on the market, fixed it up, sold everything, found beautiful homes for my animals, which was the biggest thing. I would have
Yes.
lived with my Great Pyrenees. Zeus and I would have lived in my car
Yeah.
traveling until I found him the right home. But anyway, I
Right.
did find a really good place for him. So I started. So why did I do it? It was just the feeling that I wanted to be free and travel, but I also, as an underlying thing, was looking for a place to live in a community.
Yes.
It wasn't like people would say, "Well, where are you going? Have you found it yet?" And I'm like, "No," because that it was an underlying motivation while I'm traveling. It wasn't like, "Oh my God, I have to figure this out." It's just I'm going to go to the next place that feels right.
Right.
Well, I started in Canada and got there 2 weeks before the lockdowns, and I had the right to stay 6 months. But I decided to stay longer because I preferred to be there during the COVID time. So I applied for a visa and stayed a year and a half in the Okanagan Valley
Oh, wow.
in several towns. I had a friend there, I made friends. And then I came back to the States, traveled around places I thought I wanted to live. Santa Fe was one, Albuquerque. Um, at some point, I decided to go to Europe. I love France and Paris. Was in France and Croatia and Italy. And I go along just based on intuition, literally. Sometimes I don't know until a few days before, for example, my Airbnb lease is up, where I'm going to go next. But I just go on what feels right. So at this point, so I was in Europe 4 months. I came back to the States, traveled different places. I've stayed in Northern California, where I am now, for months at a time. Last summer, I was invited to do a work exchange in France. So I went and did a year, not a year, I did several weeks helping a lady in her 400-year-old mill turn that into permaculture gardens. And from there, went to Paris for a month, which was really a dream to stay in Paris that long. And then I went to Tangier, Morocco, really at last minute, loved it and stayed there for 3 months. And now I'm back in the States and I'm not sure what will be next. But so what is my so that's my motivation really. I'm still looking for, I think, a place to settle. I haven't found it yet. Um, I absolutely love living in places that speak to me and meeting the people and learning and living in new ways. So I guess that's it in a nutshell for me. Also, I've had financial shocks recently, in fact, which is part of why I'm back in the States, shifting to see how I can um, regain the finances and work in ways that continue to allow for freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And what I hear come through really is, for one, trusting your intuition in order to be able to lead, your life from that deep trust in intuition that you're going to find the next place. And though finding home may be an underlying current, we too have been using our intuition to go from place to place and decide where we're going, and even which Airbnb we're going to stay in. And it's turned into a very aligned and divine way to do it. And so the more that trust builds, the more I think the confidence builds to do this. Because when I hear you speak, I mean, I'm just I witness the courage it takes in order to do what you did and what you continue to do. And I know that from my experience as well. And I also know that the more that I do it that way, the sort of trust builds and home becomes embodied a little bit more, like in the heart, in the body, in the being, in the place wherever I am, you know? Um, that said, the amount of time that it actually takes to do the logistical planning, even when going off of intuition, is so much more than I thought it was gonna be. What do you think?
Oh my gosh, I totally hear you, Elizabeth. Yes. And I want to say I was hearing that with you too. You're moving on intuition. And I as well. And what you said is true. I feel like actually there's no other way for me to do it. If I let my mind go and try to figure stuff out, it's stressful and it usually doesn't work well. It just, so at this point, I don't even do that. Sometimes I get lost in worry, but in the end, I go with what feels right.
Right,
And then things just fall into place. They just keep falling into place beautifully. I'll give one short example. Maybe a year ago, I was back in Moscow visiting people, and I wanted to come here to Nevada City, and the rents here are quite high, and the Airbnbs are quite high. And I was looking at them, and nothing was speaking to me, and da da da. And finally, I realized I was thinking too much, and I said, "Okay, Nancy, stop. You just choose what your heart wants to go." And I saw a beautiful one, which was quote unquote outside my budget, but I did it, and I let it go, and I booked it. Well, with the lady there in the first few days offered me to either stay in her one of her two Airbnbs, negotiated rent for what I wanted because she said, "Nancy, I know you. I've seen your Airbnb reviews. I know you're a good tenant. I want you." So in
right.
this place where there were hardly any places to rent and people were complaining about it, I got, for as long as I wanted, a place to stay. It was fantastic.
Oh
So
my
that's
god.
the kind of thing that happens to me and what I see happening. Um, yes, when going on intuition.
That's so
Excuse me,
cool.
I don't know if you can, I have a visitor here of Philo the cat. He's
Oh,
talking. I don't know if you can hear him.
oh, nice. No.
There he is. Hey, buddy.
Of course, he's coming to
So,
share the stories of
yeah. So now I've forgotten your question. Did I answer it?
Yeah, we were talking about intuition and courage
Yeah.
and following the intuition and how it can kind of strengthen in its own, even though it's amorphous and unknown, the trust builds in one's intuition. And then you
Yeah.
start, yeah, getting recognizing when you're caught up in your head and trying to figure everything out from your head. And it requires dropping back into your heart, into yourself, and trusting. I love that story about finding you just went with the Airbnb that you really wanted, and
Yeah.
then they recognized you. You see, there's this give and take exchange. There's this exchange of energy. It's like when you tap into a place, you're
Yeah.
not just tapping into it for yourself. You're picking up on the energy of the people of that place. That's what I've learned as well. And then when you get there and you meet the people, you're like, "Oh yeah, no kidding. Well, that's
Mm.
why I'm here." And that's why this place felt so much better than the other places. And they keep asking me here, for example, that happened to me here, very similar thing. They're just like, there's so many Airbnbs in this town. How did you pick us? You know, we're so lucky. They feel and they've
Oh,
invited me back and my daughter, who's not with me on this leg, to come back anytime as their guest and stay
oh,
in their
yeah.
house, not as an Airbnb.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of similar to, so you wound up meeting a lot of friends there in
Yeah.
making friends in Nevada City, right? And building community off of that,
Yeah.
following your heart on that one stretch of an Airbnb, and then you've made other connections and friendships and
Yeah, and I want to, two things you just said, I want to relate. Um, what I've seen is that my mind, when it gets in the worry, like, should you do this? Should you do that? Da 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 da. This is too expensive, blah blah blah. It's just all noise because in the end you make a decision. So that's what I learned as well. Like the trying to figure out is not even helpful. Like I don't even I'll get caught up in it, but I realize it's because of some fear. But in the end I make a decision anyway. And it's usually not based on all that stuff. And plenty of times I've tried, I mean, more than often than not, tried to figure out how life is going to go and made all these plans and they don't work. So I see the futility of the mind in that way. And that it really, for me, in my life, it's going through what I would call heart or alignment is, yes, I have the trust in it because I've just lived it. Like you said, like in your experience there with your Airbnb hosts being friends.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And the second thing, I had a very similar experience I want to share recently because it was so impactful to me. So I went to Tangier, Morocco, not knowing anybody and actually not very prepared to live in a Muslim country. Um, and I do speak French, but I don't speak Arabic. So it was a huge adjustment. But I kept going back to one particular little restaurant in my first few weeks because it felt good. And I noticed the wife of the owner, her energy was, from my feeling, gracious and smooth and beautiful. And I just loved it. I'm like, this is wonderful. I loved her energy. Didn't talk to her too much. Well, what has happened? They're my lifelong friends now. One day, um, the owner did not speak English or French, but someone who was working there did speak English and started talking to me. So we started chatting. Then the owner came and they chatted. They invited me to tea. I sat for several hours by the cash register drinking tea like a family member. They invited me for tea later. And that day, the owner said to me, would not let me tip him and said, "You are family. You can tell by the face, you're your family." And
yeah,
and they've become my friends. So I felt that the bottom line was I had a resonance already there. I recognized an energy and
right,
I recognized it in his wife, who is now my friend. And we all kind of recognize each other. So that's
yeah,
what I feel happens and is confirmation of this living through heart or intuition.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, that's really well said. And that whole scenario really just reinforces the concept, which is
Yeah,
hard
and
to
for me, you can't
imagine.
plan it. There's no planning of these things.
Right.
The mind can't plan it. It just is like this flow of life.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's been, well, my history and background is in, professions of the built environment, landscape architecture, all of that, right? And it's very much a right and left brain balanced way of being, which was very exciting and valuable and worthwhile for me to be developing. I really felt like I was developing both sides of the brain because the creative process is very intuitive, but the design process is very intuitive. Um, Getting it built is very analytical and very action
Mm.
step oriented. It required this amalgamation of both. And I think that really served, and I know you too, in the way that you think, in the way that you research things, and the way that you have a very expanded way of reading any situation of any kind, doing your own research on it, getting an overview, and then knowing where you stand with it. There's discernment, there's um, recognition, and there's just a way of being like that that I see in you also, that is the both right and left side of the
Mhm.
brain. Our culture and society really emphasizes the logistical and analytical side, the thinking like you're talking about. So to reawaken that intuitive right side of the brain thinking, and actually marrying that more um, in a union to lead an unconventional life, is it really takes both, but this waking up of the intuitive side to pair it as equally with the analytical side, I find is what it takes to do this.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. That kind of goes back to what you're saying about all the logistical planning we do, right?
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
going with heart, but then when it comes down to actually planning this stuff,
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to Tangier. Well, that means this, that, and the other thing. In my
Yeah.
case, as an example, I had already booked Georgia. I'm learning Russian, so I
As
just,
in the
that's interesting.
country.
Georgia was
Yeah.
kind of a thought process. I should go there plus a heart, but I had it all booked. I was set. And then things arose that made me feel it was not appropriate. And so in a week, I then had to use my brain to logistically cancel everything, get as much
Right.
financial back, figure out how to get to Tangier, where to go, all that. And it takes a lot. And
It
I have
does.
found, especially when you're, if you had an unlimited budget, I think it would take less. But when you have a budget of a certain amount,
Yeah.
you're choosing carefully where to go, and but also based on, for me, I will learn about a place on the internet and try to make a good choice about where to stay in a city that that will be conducive to meeting people, safe, all those things. And when you don't know a place, there's a lot of, using your brain on the internet, researching. So
That's right.
they both go in. Yeah.
You're reminding me though of what well, if we were to break down what intuition is, in part it is intentional, in that setting the intention to live by the values that you have, and then looking and being able to identify when a people or place has that value. And like you were saying, when you've recognized it in the people and places, that you've found, and it's been, reciprocal. Yeah. I think that's just testament to it.
Um, uh, Elizabeth and I were just talking and were reminded that we actually met, um, years before we decided to do these slow travel journeys, solo journeys, um, in Moscow, Idaho, via doing a slow travel trip together. And do you want to tell about that, Elizabeth? Do you want to
Well, it's
start or
so
do you want me
funny
to start?
because, yeah, we were trying to remember when we first met, and Moscow's a great town. Well, finding Moscow initially for me, I know you grew up in the area, but for me to move there from, I was living in New Jersey at the time, and I was, born and raised in New Jersey, and to go to Idaho was like going to Mars for, my
No,
family
right.
and friends.
New Jersey to Idaho. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that was a very intuitive process to get there in the first place. But I remember when my dad said to me in a diner in New Jersey, after I applied for a job there, he's just like, I know you're already going there. He could read my energy, even though we didn't never use that language or anything like that. It was really funny. But so we saw each other around a lot. We had similar friends, but we hadn't met yet. And then we learned that we had a shared very good friend who was not feeling well, and was struggling with cancer, and living with her daughter and her daughter's husband in Reno. And I just remember really clicking. Like you and I started talking, it was like very natural and very immediate. And we didn't have to explain much to each other. I remember our conversation and meeting being very flowing. And very shortly thereafter, I think you asked me, do you want to go on a road trip to go
Yeah.
see Pam? And I was like, yeah, yeah, yes. And we got in the
Yeah.
car, and we really got to know each other on that trip. We talked for hours. It was beautiful conversation. You had
So let
Zeus.
me just give a little background. Can I interrupt you just a sec to give a
Yeah.
structure so people understand? So Moscow, Idaho is a university town in north central Idaho, about 30,000 people. And Reno, how long was that trip? That was a long day drive, very long, 10 hours, something like that. And this town is small in the sense that people know each other. So our friend Pam was very well known in the Moscow community, and she had become ill and had moved to Reno maybe only a month or so before we started talking. But many people cared about her,
Yeah.
and I think I'd been talking to them and realized I could make a trip and take care packages from the many people that wanted
Oh,
to bring things. So we had things for her,
that's
remember,
right.
in the car.
Yeah.
So I think I had some idea around that and talked to you about it, but we didn't know each other well, except just by seeing in the community, which is the kind of community Moscow is. You see and know people. I want
Yeah.
to add that I had my Great Pyrenees at that time, who was a teenager. I think he was only about a year old, and a Honda Fit. So if you know, a Honda Fit's a small hatchback. So it was Elizabeth and I and Zeus who took up most of the back seat and had never been on a road trip. And our stuff, and then stuff that people care package just to send to Pam. And so we drove that 10 hours through country, right? Through Idaho and Nevada to see Pam. So it was quite really, looking back, that was an intuitive kind of spur of the moment decision that we made, also based on resonance. Like I remember talking to you and thinking, okay, yes, 'cause I was pretty picky and still am about who I spend time with, especially 10 hours in a car packed with
Oh
stuff.
gosh. Yeah.
But it felt right. And it was a beautiful trip. It was just fantastic. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, on all levels. How we connected and talked and shared, and then were able to visit our friend and connect with her, and the dog was fine, and my dog got along with their dogs, and
Yeah.
it just was
I
all
remember
it
that
was all
Zeus made friends on that trip.
Zeus made friends. Yes, so that's how we became friends. And what's really interesting is that was years and years before we started this travel. Had
Yeah.
no intention or idea that we would
Yeah.
both end up doing very similar things at about the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is interesting how life works that way.
Yeah. I
um
remember we had a few phone conversations in between the years, but largely we didn't we weren't in close contact there for a big chunk
mhm.
of time. And I remember on the phone calls, the very few phone calls we had, I was just in shock and amazed at how parallel our lives were and the things that we were doing and dealing with and the visas and all of this stuff and just like figuring out how long you could stay in a certain place and where are you going. I thought really we might meet in Tbilisi, Georgia. I really thought that because that was on my radar too. I was going to go
That's
there
right.
too, but I didn't go there either yet.
That's right. So just to backtrack, so the story about when we traveled to see our friend, that must have been about 2013 or 12. And then we were friends in Moscow for some years. And then we kind of shifted. You went back to the East Coast.
Yeah.
And then I took off, and then we didn't connect and didn't really know except a few conversations. And then, like you
Yeah.
said, realized, oh my gosh, we're both like these slow mads. Midlife slow mads is what they call it. And having all these similar experiences,
Yeah.
which it's wild when you the kind of life we live, which we'll talk about, has all kinds of very interesting challenges that are quite specific to it. And it is very confirming to talk to someone that has them. Yes, like visas and adapting to a place where you don't speak the language and all these things. Yes. And
It's true.
I think we almost crossed paths once.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
we
at
were close,
least.
but didn't quite make it in Europe, which is really hilarious.
Yeah. And then I've stayed a couple months in Santa Barbara recently as well too, so it's funny how we have the California connection
California too.
also.
Yeah.
So are we gonna see each other again in California or, somewhere else in the United States or
Let's
in
see.
Europe or
Or Europe.
Georgia or somewhere.
As we're talking, I just want to say this because this is a thing that I thought to myself in my head before I started this. I had the intention to have really good quality friends in different areas. And that has happened to
Nice.
me now of the world. And to have this sense of freedom to go anywhere, anytime, which I still pretty much have. And
Yeah.
that's what we were talking. And when you're speaking, Elizabeth, like, oh, well, maybe we'll meet in Annecy, France. Maybe we'll meet in Georgia. Maybe we'll meet in Tangier. Maybe we'll meet in California. And this is so outside a quote unquote normal life. And I know, do people say this to you? They say, like, oh my God, you're so lucky. How can you do that? But really, it's just a choice. It's just a
It is.
choice. To me, that it seems normal, and not
Yeah. Yeah.
strange. What do you think, Elizabeth?
That I've gotten a lot is, yeah, people think I'm really lucky. People think I'm really rich. Um, but no, I I'm bold. Um, I am discerning. I want to live a good quality life, and I will live according to my values, even if it means giving up comforts or things known or making really difficult decisions, dealing with the pushback that I've gotten from friends and family, who wish that I was closer for sure, understandably, and I do too. But when the push has come in some ways, I'm going to be resourceful and live my life the fullest way that I can, which is what's been leading me.
Oh, I love how you said that. Live the life the fullest way you can, and you're willing to be uncomfortable in service to a vibrant life.
Yes. Yes.
Right. That's how I feel.
Yes.
And it's so interesting to me that I kind of realized, I think the people that have the most trouble with understanding are not willing to have a discomfort because they'll get the things like, is Paris safe? And it's like, this is to me a crazy question. But what people often mean by safe is just they just don't want a discomfort of potentially someone's going to pick their pocket, or a man might flirt with them. There's all these levels of not wanting a discomfort. On that level, there's also a level of not wanting the discomfort. I remember someone asked me, like, well, what if your train doesn't get in on time? Well, then I'll deal with that. Maybe I have
Right.
to, maybe I have to, maybe I don't have anywhere to stay. Well, I'll find a hotel at the last minute. Worst case
Right.
scenario, I have to sleep in a train station. So none of these are big deals to me, but I've started to learn that they are big deals to a lot of people. And if
Right.
you're, or it's, and that's okay. But I'm also willing, absolutely willing to have some discomfort to to be in service to what my heart finds very vibrant. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Yeah.
But as I'm older, I have to say there's some things that I was willing to do when I was 20 that I'm not willing to do. There's a certain,
Oh,
there are other things I'm not, I don't,
definitely.
so I make choices to maximize the comfort of my body and not being, making sure I have time between trains, for example, so I'm not rushing those things. Um, yes. So it's both things.
It is both
Maybe.
things. I love that you brought that up because that's another very common assumption is that wherever I get where I'm going, that I'm going to be like the tourist, the typical tourist, and just have to go everywhere and have to see everything and have to do everything when I'm there. And I don't. And I don't eat out very often. I lead a very, very simple life. And I think that that's kind of really eye-opening to, like, for example, the people who I'm living with here. But they admire that because we actually share that. And so that's one of the things that has brought us closer together is they realize, oh, wow, yeah, she's cooking for herself constantly. I go to bed early, I wake up early, or else I couldn't do this because it is true. We've talked about this before, like sort of, it can be at times traveling like this full time a little hard on the nervous system, and that does take a priority. I know we both prioritize our health and the comfort of our nervous system in a sense, um, because we don't want to burn. I don't want to burn myself out. I'm going and spend 2 or 3 days trying to recover. Yeah, if it happens, it happens. But like you said, you just manage in the moment, and make decisions to take care of yourself then. And that's what I do. That's what I do. And for me, that's the big slow in the slow travel. It's like I don't compromise my daily routines. I don't compromise my rituals. I don't compromise my food. Um,
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I guess I take that so much for granted. I don't know that I could have verbalized it, but you did really beautifully. It's huge. And right, that's the same for me. Um, yes, I maximize what will help me stay healthy and my nervous system calm. And and I'm willing for that not to happen in certain circumstances to have a vibrant life. But on the daily, it's totally prioritized, absolutely.
right.
And I just don't push myself to do stuff I don't want to do. And I'm very discerning about what I do want to do. And for me, there is so much joy in the small things of life in an interesting place that is resonant. Even here, I think about Tangier a lot because it was so exotic and new. I didn't leave it for 3.5 months, except one small trip. I didn't go anywhere else. I did hardly any tourist things. I think I went to one museum and I just walked and talked and absorbed it. But even here in California, where I am back to this beautiful little town that I've been for probably a total of 9 or 10 months, it's the same because I find it beautiful and interesting. So I maximize walking and seeing the things I want to see. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's this for me, the slow travel.
that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. And then being able to come here and share these stories, it really feels like coming home.
Mm. Yes, that brought me back to what you said. Really, what I've come to is home is carried with me.
Yeah.
And while I would at this point like to have home base. Uh, what the outer world seems to think, or what I potentially would have done before, is just choose a place and okay, this is my home base, but that isn't in alignment. And that's
Right.
far more wrong and stressful than to stay without a home base, but being in the right place. So the
Yeah.
home is really here. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of
Um,
sense to
yeah,
me. Yeah.
home really is here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that way for everyone, and I totally recognize that we're all different. People are different,
Yeah.
and but for me, that's where it resides. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And on that note, we have plenty more
Yeah, I
story.
just